Hi, today I have with me State Representative Mike Yin from Wyoming, representing House District 16. Welcome, Representative Yin.
Hello, glad to be here.
Thank you so much. I'm hoping to ask you some questions in particular about COVID-19 and if it's impacted you personally or what you've seen in Wyoming.
Sure. Yeah, I don't have any personal family members that have had the virus, but it's definitely making an impact here, just like it is everywhere else.
And have you seen, have there been higher incidents of people in your community getting COVID-19?
Yeah, I think there have been some data sets that have compared, if you compare us as a county where I live, Teton County, to other states, we actually have higher per incidence per 100,000 citizens than a couple of the other higher hit states. We've been doing well once we started having a mask required policy in the county, but I think the high number of tourists coming into town, as well as people just wanting to be a bit more social, has made it a little harder than we have expected.
So it sounds like Wyoming is taking a county by county approach.
Yes, so we have county health officers in each of our county, and each of those do talk to the state health officer, and so they do have to interact with the state health officer and the governor's office to get a countywide order in place. So we do have a couple of statewide orders, but for the most part, the state has given it a more county by county approach because some of our counties are a little different than the others.
Great. And have you seen any policies that have worked, or I guess also policies that have not worked?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think the mask order has been effective, and I think a lot of it has not only been the mask order, but businesses and others showing to tourists that, look, this is a new normal. We want to keep everybody safe, so wearing a mask is just the right thing to do. And I think that communication has been really effective. With orders that have not worked, I think we could have done it earlier. And if we had done it earlier, I think we would have had more uptake than the lateness of engaging in a county-wide mask order.
And what about economic activity? Has it resumed in Jackson or in Wyoming?
It has resumed in Jackson. It's still a bit of a economic crisis, I think, in most of the state. But our sales tax revenue has been doing remarkably well. And our tourist visitation, I think from some analytics data, has been higher this year than other other months in previous years that are at the exact same time. So they have, while it was a slump in May, the summer months have been excessively busy, even with the restricted orders on how many people can be indoors at any one time and restrictions on large events like that.
Great. Thank you. So shifting gears, according to Stop AAPI Hate, there have been over 2,000 reports of hate incidents against Asian Americans in the wake of COVID-19. Have you seen any of this in Jackson or in Wyoming?
So Jackson's a pretty small community. It is mostly white, very, very heavily white. And we don't actually have that many Asian Americans. We have, I think, 1% is the demographic across the entire state, less than 1%. So I don't think I've seen any personally, but I do see people interacting in social media kind of blaming Chinese people for the flu, but no personal attacks as of yet.
And worldwide, people have seen the death of George Floyd and the resulting protests. Have you seen any protests or any activities in Wyoming?
Yeah, I've actually been surprised about how many protests have been happening across Wyoming. Laramie has been doing one pretty consistently. which is in the southern end of Wyoming. It's one of our university towns. Our one statewide university is housed there. But Jackson has had quite a few, and it's had quite a few groups pop up in response to try to take action based on the results of the death and the resulting protests.
And although Wyoming only has 1% AAPI population, have you seen any Asian American groups reacting to the protest?
So again, because it's so small, the community, the AAPI community is pretty disparate. It doesn't tend to be as cohesive as in many other larger communities. However, during the protests, I have seen AAPI folks come out, as well as other people of color, and that has been really encouraging, even seeing some of them speak during some of the protests.
Okay. What outcome would you hope to achieve from this in the Black Lives Matter movement? Yeah,
I think the level of awareness it brings to where we're lacking in public policy is really apparent. I think there's room for us evaluating qualified immunity on the state level. There are definitely aspects of race taking place in policing actions, and maybe sometimes in Jackson, but also in other parts of the state. So I think there is a coalition there to take action on the statewide level. And in the on the local level, the groups that have popped up have been urging their local electeds or our local electeds to take a look at the county and local budgets on policing to see if there are things that we can do to make our community safer for everyone, not just a subset of the population.
The current COVID-19 pandemic and the Black Lives Matter movement has changed the state of the world drastically. What do you think is required of the United States and of the world going forward? Yeah,
I want this to be an experience that we learn from. I mean, there are definitely mistakes on every level that have happened. So I hope that in the history books, we remember what worked and what didn't work and make sure that we don't repeat them going forward. And so I look forward to progress. And as Martin Luther King said, the arc of progress is long, but always moves in the same direction. So I want us to just make sure that we look back in history and don't repeat the same mistakes, because that seems to happen a lot.
And so what are the overall challenges you anticipate for the 2021 legislative session in Wyoming?
Yeah, so the legislative session, the big thing is that the COVID crisis has not only put a hampering on sales tax in other parts of the state, but also put a hampering on a very big portion of our tax revenue, which is mineral tax revenue, so on coal, oil, and gas. And because of the decline in all three of those, in both prices and usage, it has created a budget crisis for our state. And so that's going to be probably the biggest thing that we look forward to solving in the 2021 legislative session. But it also means we have to take the lessons that we've learned during this crisis and make sure that we put into policy ways to make sure we don't repeat those mistakes from the past as well.
Great. Can you speak a little more about some of the lessons learned as it applies to Wyoming?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think we did a decent job in empowering our state health officer to make decisions. But simultaneously, when the federal CARES Act money came down, trying to react quickly and find out the best ways to tackle that is very difficult for a part-time legislature. A lot of us have other jobs and things that we work on during the part of the year where we're not in session. And so getting all of us together and making the decisions of how to best allocate all of the resources that we're given to deal with the crisis is one that we'll have to look after and reevaluate.
And what about, are there any initiatives or bills that you're planning to move forward next session?
Yeah, I think, like I said, the qualified immunity bill is one I think that there will be some movement towards, whether it's me carrying it or someone else. I think that will happen, as well as we're one of only a couple of states that don't have hate crime legislation in the United States. And so I think that there may be movement towards that as well. I think in the local government space is probably one where we're going to focus on what are ways that local governments can raise revenues for themselves as the state becomes in a budget crisis, to see how we can empower local governments to raise revenue if the state still flounders a bit.
And just for some of our audience members, can you explain what exactly it means, qualified immunity?
So qualified immunity is a judicial doctrine that the court system put in place to essentially grant a sort of immunity to liability for public officials, including police officers. So if there hasn't been some sort of action taken in the past that meant that there was liability for an official, they are automatically granted immunity for that type of action. So basically, only previous actions that have been convicted on public officials are actions that can still be convicted on them. Otherwise, they are given immunity. So I think that's something where too much immunity was given, and we're going to have to dial that back to make sure that we can hold everyone accountable that is in public office.
Okay. Well, best of luck to the next session, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks.